In the end, Kostya, he was just a sick, drunken old man. It was a pity to see his condition, said Sumarokov, who had received only favors from the deceased. I knew him, the young man said bitterly. I heard of his horrible atrocities against entire families, decimating them on their own lands. Perhaps you didn't know him well. When I was young, Norobod was the devil himself. Sumarokov couldn't argue with that. He made a point of saying goodbye, because he had to get back before dark. The package has been delivered by Iago. Would you like me to give him a message? Would you like to respond, Comrade Kostya? The cooperativists, led by Kostya, wore a red scarf under their caps, which they used to cover their faces if they had to hide it, as some of them were fugitives from land and others were sons of the aristocracy, who could not be identified. Kostya wore it constantly because he was a fugitive, too. Sumarokov had been to some meetings. He knew that scarf, but he didn't know that the emblem had been introduced by Comrade Iago, so that no one would recognize him. Iago, at the meetings, made the issue of remaining anonymous, being the son of the worst enemy of his ideas, and one that many moujiks wanted to exterminate him and his descendants. Sumarokov remembered that they had once seen a handkerchief kept in his pocket, so he believed that no one there knew who Iago really was. The cooperative members also didn't know who Comrade Iago was, not even Kostya. Iulián Sumarokov clearly realized, filled with admiration, that Iago and Alex were the same person. He felt immense pride in his new boss, and would do anything to help him remain incognito. This revelation stunned him. How could he, so rich, be interested in poor moujiks? He anxiously awaited Kostya's answer, determined to hide his great discovery from everyone. Kostya could never have imagined that Comrade Iago's message had been sent by Alex Norobod, the new owner of the Norobod farm, his main enemy, where he and his family had once worked and had every reason to harbor such bitter resentment. Iago was highly respected and loved by all. Although he rarely appeared in public, everyone knew him through his revolutionary ideas, translated to moujiks in the form of pamphlets. Kostya himself had seen him only once, one night. The two maintained a constant correspondence through faithful intermediaries. Alex always found a way to disguise his true identity. Kostya worked on the front lines, faithfully translating his thoughts. The purpose of Alex's message was precisely to set the date for a decisive meeting, chaired by him and Comrade Vladimir. Iago wanted as many supporters as possible. While Kostya responded to the message, Sumarokov and Kardienka tended to the animals and ate a few crusts of bread, strengthening themselves for the journey home. Finally, Kostya handed him the letter. Sumarokov took the letter, put it in his pocket, said goodbye, and set off for the farm. The robbery incident left the couple upset and suspicious of passers-by in the city. They had spent the few 18 kopecks they had on clothes, and now, with neither money nor gifts, they returned home empty-handed. When they arrived, Mrs. Norobod learned of the incident and, feeling compassionate, tried to help them with a few meters of wool and socks. Alex's joy upon receiving Kostya's message was greater than he could have imagined. His boss's eyes shone, and he thanked Sumarokov, ordering new boots to be made for all the family members. We lost on one side, but we won on the other, and it was even better that way, my dear, he said to his bride. The bride examined the fabrics and wools with great joy. The boots, stockings, and fabrics were superior in quality to those they had lost. We were lucky, Iulián, very lucky indeed. And Olga, before leaving, would help Kardienka work on the new clothes, preparing them for winter and also for the wedding. Iulián and Kardienka would face a new impasse, giving their uncles their answer before leaving. The decision was a difficult one. They wanted to accept the proposal, but it came just now when they were doing so well there, with the full support of their employers. They didn't want to be ungrateful to either of them. You understand, Uncle Nicolau, I'm very pleased with your invitation. I would love to be able to accept it, but I prefer to stay with my children. Where would they find such an advanced school like the one Professor Simeon runs? The uncles were very upset when they received the refusal. Disappointment was written all over their faces, because they had believed they would accept this offer they couldn't refuse. Now they were beginning to find their 18 Russian coin worth 100th a ruble. Very crazy nephews. Iulián reinforced his arguments, trying to explain to his uncle, "You're young, uncle. Give me a little more time. I have to get my boys and Mayra on their way. I think I've made the right decision now. Look, Uncle, at the school opportunity. They don't even seem like my children. Nicolau had to agree with his nephew. He'd never seen them so well cared for. I'll be hoping you'll change your mind someday. In the meantime, I'm rooting for you, Iulián. If you need old Uncle, I'll be waiting for you. The next day, the couple left desolate, leaving the house empty, without their happy conversations and endless affairs. 33 men, and an ideal. On the farm, the mood of dissatisfaction among some employees persisted in a whisper. Corinne and Sergel, allied in their quest to extirpate the Sumarokov family from a farm, were determined to turn them against their bosses. Fortunately, all their insinuations in this regard were fruitless due to the sympathy the owners felt for them. However, the dishonest couple hatched a terrible plan against them, which, according to their conjectures, would succeed sooner or later. Alex had been away from the farm for a few weeks. No one had told him the real reason for his trip, but Iulián suspected it had something to do with the message he had brought. To Iulián's surprise, the boss had granted him certain powers over part of his land, making him responsible for dozens of mujiks in his absence. Sergei would remain responsible for the same amount. The overseer, resentful, disagreed with Alex's actions, but he didn't argue, and no one noticed the cynical look he gave his boss and Iulián when he saw their backs. Before leaving, Alex exchanged some thoughts with Dmitri, neighbor and seaman. I received a letter from Comrade Kostya. The news is the worst possible, although we have secured significant support. Incredibly, we have the support of countless small landowners. In fact, they are the most committed to the cooperative. I intend, Semlin, to implement our ideas here when I return. It will be a new experience that will lead other landowners to change their perspective on landowners. I admire you, Alex. Even with all my ideals, I still wouldn't have the courage to give up my possessions. If I had any, in favor of the cause, Simeon, without possessions, had nothing to give up, but Alex was one of the largest landowners in the region. Neighbor, who was listening to the conversation, gave Alex a mischievous look and turned to Semyon. Want to clarify? How could you not, you sheep? You, too, give up other possessions. You give up your knowledge in favor of the ignorant, possessions of the spirit, much more important, imperishable possessions that neither moth nor rust can steal, argued Dmitri, neighbor. Jesus was the greatest revolutionary recorded in history, and these ideas are contained in the New Testament. The two were somewhat skeptical, but they agreed that Master Neighbor was right, and, when he argued about matters of the spirit, he always had the upper hand. How are your researches going, Dmitri, with the girl? Asked Alex. Progressing. The magician seemed unwilling to talk about it at that moment, perhaps because he did not yet have sufficient data and had not yet put his observations into practice. Semyon intervened. Wizard, Mayra has made amazing progress at school. She surpasses all her peers, devours books, and barely speaks. She's entering that enchanting phase of her life, adolescence. Her delicate and refined manners possess such nobility that she hardly seems to be the daughter of peasants. I would say she is a gifted child. I agree with you, Semyon. I've been following her closely. She's mature enough to understand what's going on with her. Her visions have sparked new ideas in me. Mayra can only guess at certain things. It's as if she's ahead of my thoughts and concludes what my reason suggests. I'm very interested in continuing this research. Regarding the appearance of my sister's spirit, have you reached any conclusion, Dmitri? Yes, Alex, but it's still too early to judge. We're still feeling the quicksand of her mind, given the girl's physical constitution and the fever that seizes her every time the spirit visits her. I'm very interested in you completing your research quickly. It's something very intimate and painful for me. Do you understand, Dmitri? Unfortunately, I wasn't here when it all happened. To this day, I haven't heard anything about the disappearance of my niece, who, according to reports, was swallowed on the night of her birth. A doubt lingers in my mind. I was told she died at birth, but I have my doubts after all this time. I believe that only your methods can shed some light on us. The three friends enjoyed some delicious wine before retiring. It was night, and Alex would leave early to meet his comrade Kostya. In the first decades of the 19th century, an avalanche of spirits descended to Earth with the specific mission of bringing humanity the awakening of the spiritual world, the blossoming of extrasensory relationships, leading researchers to study the so-called mediumistic phenomena, corroborating worldwide the great work of Allan Kardec, the codifier of the new doctrine, Spiritism. In Russia, the changing economic situation contributed to the emergence of imposters and reformers of thought. Intellectuals exerted great influence over the masses, and during this period, writers emerged who praised the suffering of the Russians, attempting to awaken in them the need for change. The internal revolutions fueled by abolitionist thought during this period seemed more like a boiling cauldron of water that simmered, affecting all social classes. Alex was absent from the property, and days later, Professor Simeon followed in his wake. As previously agreed, they would hold the important meeting with the cooperative members. Taking advantage of this period of absence, Sergel, dissatisfied with everything and everyone, decided to carry out his macabre plan once and for all, to definitively take possession of property he had stolen from the Norobods. He had enticed dozens of men who, eager for change or driven by the ill will and hatred of the landowners, would seize the lands by force of arms if necessary. Iulián Maxikov, who had remained with some farmhands, was unaware of the trap he had set and, believing he was working on his boss's land, ended up in the den of thieves who supported Sergei. "Let's fix this fence and delimit the area once and for all," the overseer ordered decisively. The men reinforced the fence. This was all new to Sumarokov. These insurgent men were disobeying him and causing him serious difficulties. In the afternoon, the valiant mujik gathered some of his trusted men and obtained the necessary reinforcements to continue the work assigned by the boss and not the one Sergei was forcing them to do. I received direct orders from Mr. Alex Norobod not to deviate from the work on the border fields. "I don't know why the plantations on this side are abandoned," he complained. Sumarokov, annoyed. "They've been abandoned for several months." Sumarokov, one of the mujiks explained. "And why?" Iulián asked. "Sergei," said another mujik. "He's been making this division for a long time, claiming that the best land to cultivate is on that side," explained a worker, pointing to the area. "Does Mr. Alex know about the separation?" Sumarokov asked, worried. "A few days ago he passed by here, but Sergei ended up taking him to the other side. We don't know if he saw everything." The peasant looked at Sumarokov expressively. "I suspect Sergei is deceiving him so that he doesn't know the truth. On this side, the plains and the land are ruined." The men, who did not like the overseer and suspected a plot, began to talk among themselves, each recalling some facts. The noise made it difficult to understand. Sumarokov called their attention. "Listen, comrades, we need to know what's really going on. Where are the other men?" No one knew the whereabouts of the others. "They must be in the fields on the other side," someone ventured. "What if the order was to work this patch of land?" Iulián Sumarokov exclaimed, not understanding why his orders weren't being heeded. Alex had told everyone else to obey him in his absence. Irritated by the situation, Sumarokov decided, "Come on, let's all go there. Something wrong is happening. This attitude is delaying our service." Accompanied by the men, Sumarokov entered the well-built fence, walked a few meters, and saw a handful of grim-looking men guarding the area. "Stop right there," shouted the one in front. Sumarokov recognized him as one of the servants and, ignoring him, continued on. He was blinded by their disobedience, but the peasants there had been instructed by the overseer to attack anyone who entered the field. Sergei's men were numerous, armed, and easily overpowered them, leading them away. Under these conditions, they stumbled until they reached a camp. Sumarokov and his men tried to free themselves, but were severely beaten with clubs and ropes. They were all gagged and tied to posts driven into the ground. When they arrived, they saw other men also surrendered. It was brute force, the brutal seizure of land. Only now did Iulián understand the real reason for his aversion to the overseer. He truly was a disgusting, cold man. Their situation was not at all good. The plan, so well laid and studied, was entirely favorable to the overseer's position. A third of the poor, subjugated peasants thought he was truly the owner of the land. The more intelligent ones, who knew his status as overseer, never allowed themselves to be swayed by his ideas. Despite being separated from the others, the better to continue their deception of... Now the overseer had this additional trump card. It was the end of the Norobod reign. 30 for the ambush. In the attic, the wizard neighbor, who suspected nothing, remained immersed in his research. Mrs. Norobod, Sonia, some servants of the house, and employees who took care of the livestock and the surroundings of the mansion. Nearby, in the izba of the enclosure, Katienka waited anxiously for Iulián Sumarokov. Her heart was heavy with the delay. The day was growing dark, and there was no sign of the men returning from their work. Neither he nor the others. What had happened to them? He asked himself constantly. Restless, she went to the mansion. Mrs. Norobod, did something happen to the employees? Not that I know of. Why do you ask, Katienka? Night is coming soon. Iulián and the others haven't returned. They should have returned by now. Have the children gone too? No, they are keeping the wizard neighbor company. You have no reason to worry, then. I'll go over there. I'll ask the others if they saw them coming back, said Katinya hurriedly, before the daylight had completely faded. He looked at the path the employees usually walked and saw nothing. The school was a few meters away. The wizard and the boys were leaving. Pavel, do you know about your father? No, Katienka. Did something happen? I'm worried. So far, neither he nor the others have arrived. Strange, replied Iulián the son, approaching her. Maybe they were late, complained Nicolau. It's almost dark, Katienka argued, looking at the horizon. You're right, Katienka, Pavel said. Go, Iulián. You know where he went to work. We need to check that nothing happened to them. Alone? The firstborn was scared. Who could go with you? Asked Katinya, looking around. Why don't you go with him, Pavel? Argued Nicholas. Neighbor and Mayra, seeing them focused and with worried expressions, approached and Neighbor asked, What's happening? Pavel gave explanations to the magician, while Iulián fetched the horses. The children's conversations, which had left school, faded, giving way to silence. Each one returned to their homes. Everything there was very quiet. Something had indeed happened. A woman or two, accompanied by a child, appeared, asking Katienka about her companions. Katienka didn't know how to answer them. Distress took hold of her soul. Her hands trembled and sweated. The red twilight threatened to end. They had to go quickly. She herself felt like mounting up and making sure of the facts. Stay, Katienka. We'll see what happened, said Iulián. Careful, boys. Don't go any further when it's getting dark. Go back, the girl ordered. If it got dark, there would be no point in persisting. The boys couldn't go into the woods. They weren't used to it and didn't know the dangers. After a while, Iulián and Pavel returned to their homes, feeling sad. Katienka ran when she heard the horses' hoofbeats, but the two young men returned without any news. The darkness prevented them from advancing any further. Sergei didn't come back either? The girl asked. No sign, no noise. No one has returned. It's all very quiet, said Iulián, who had accompanied his father a few times and was more informed about the customs. They had no choice but to wait. Katenka couldn't calm down. She stood trembling by the stove, trying to warm her hands. They spent the night in the greatest anticipation, and before daybreak, everyone was up. The stove heated the house, and the samovar maintained the ideal temperature. At the first rays of dawn, Katienka ran to the Norobod mansion. Everything was quiet. She waited outside for the household staff to wake up so some men could go after the other missing men. This had never happened before. Mrs. Norobod was usually an early riser and would soon be back. She might order someone to go and find them. The noise of people getting up cheered Katienka, who, ready, did not hesitate to mount up and go herself, behind her man. She hoped to find a solution to the night's problem. Has Mrs. Norobod gotten up yet? Yes, the wing replied. She's coming down. It seems she didn't sleep well at all. Where's Corinne? Asked Mrs. Norobod, entering the room. I haven't seen Corinne since yesterday, the girl replied. Nobody saw her? I'll go look for her, said the maid, going into the mansion. Perhaps she's still asleep. The two women looked out of the house and saw several women approaching, asking about their husbands. They woke each other up and soon gathered, noticing the absence of many of the servants who worked with Sergei and Sumarokov. The strangest thing was that some of the ispas were completely empty. While gathered, They heard a noise, the sound of horses clattering, and everyone ran forward in hope. It was one of the moujiks who had managed to escape the ambush set by Sergei against Sumarokov and his men. Mrs. Norobod, God help me. The man was pale, and Katienka recognized him as the stranger who had crossed her path when she and Iulián went to town. I know this man, Mrs. Norobod said. Yes, it's Karosky. He was recently hired by my son, and he's working in the field with Sergei. The man dismounted and took a deep breath to tell them what had happened. That's how they learned of Sergei's entire plot against the Norobods. He was among the men who allied with Sergei, instructed to seize the estate, with promises from the overseer. At first, Karosky was unaware of the overseer's malice and innocently sided with him. When he noticed something amiss, he lay in wait to see how far the overseer would go with his ideas. He was new to the estate and unaware of his background. He learned of the diabolical plan by mere chance, because many other naive men were working against their master and unaware of the cruel Sergei's true actions and intentions, believing Mr. Alex to be in on everything. As Karosky continued, Mrs. Norobod grew livid with rage. Her face expressed all her annoyance at this sordid servant who had the air of a lord and subjugated the late Norobod. So that was it. He had always worked against them. Whereas Sumarokov and the others, the woman asked nervously. Everyone was arrested. Few managed to escape. Those who escaped must still be hiding, afraid of being arrested. How did you escape? Katienka asked, very worried. They think I'm on their side. When I realized the trap against Sumarokov, I pretended to be supporting the capture and, with my free pass, managed to escape. I don't think anyone saw me. They still don't know I came to warn them. Mr. Alex doesn't deserve what's happening. But what happened to the others? They're gagged in the courtyard, in the tents that were set up days ago to carry out this damn plan. Mrs. Alex needs to be notified urgently. Karosky was willing to go all the way to help those people who, now, would truly need many loyal and strong hands to win the fierce armed struggle in their own territories. My God, murmured Mrs. Norobod. How can I warn my son? I don't know exactly where he is. Wizard neighbor, who was watching the impasse, responded, I know where to find him. Everyone turned to the wizard. He spoke so calmly, as if nothing were happening, and his calm demeanor finally calmed them. Fortunately, someone with a cool head could still reason for them. Oh, thank God, someone exclaimed. Will you call him, wizard neighbor? Mrs. Norobod asked, leaning on that hope. Yes, immediately. Prepare me a troika. I'll go with you, sir. It's dangerous to set another trap. Sergei's men are armed. Karosky offered. Neighbor, given to meditation, now became a hero to those women who placed all their hope in him.